Well, hey there, Mama, and welcome back to the Moms Overcoming Overwhelm podcast, episode number 244. I'm Emily McDermott, and I am here beside you on this journey as we work together to declutter your home, head, and heart. If your motherhood journey has been plagued by mom guilt, feeling like a complete failure, and also wishing that you hadn't just yelled at your kids again, especially in the summertime where they're driving me more nuts than usual, or is that just me? Today's episode is for you. I am chatting with JoAnn Crohn. She is the founder of No Guilt Mom, and she's also the author of the book, The Best Mom is a Happy Mom. She's a parenting coach, and she's dedicated to helping overwhelmed moms create calmer, happier homes through practical strategies and mindset shifts. And this is an amazing book full of real practical strategies to kind of combat these negative limiting beliefs that we have. And so we chat about the difference between mom guilt and mom shame and why you're constantly feeling like a quote unquote bad mom, how to set healthy boundaries with your kids without the guilt, how to use circle thinking to help you create new neural pathways and hopefully help you stop yelling at your kids, and to use JoAnn's happy framework to work through your kids' most annoying behaviors. So I hope that you enjoy this fun conversation with JoAnn. Make sure you check out her podcast, No Guilt Mom. And without further ado, grab that notebook and pen and let's dive into today's episode. Hey Mama, are you tired of your cluttered home and mile-long to-do lists but are too overwhelmed to know where to start? Do you lack the time and motivation and don't think you'll ever conquer the clutter? You're in the right place. I'm Emily, wife, boy mom, and declutter coach who has overcome the overwhelm in my own life through decluttering and simplifying. I believe every mom deserves the peace that comes from a clutter-free home. Ready to get your life back? Let's declutter your home, head, and heart together. Well, hey, JoAnn, thanks so much coming on the Moms Overcoming Overwhelm podcast. I am so thrilled to talk to you today.
Thank you. I'm thrilled to talk to you too, Emily.
Yeah, I have been aware of you for a while. You have a summit that you've done in the past, and then it's one of these things where when you've been podcasting for a certain amount of time and you're having a name like No Guilt Mom, and mine is Moms Overcoming Overwhelm, like I feel like we were destined to meet at some point.
Absolutely. Helping the same issue that appears in moms everywhere. I mean, and probably appeared in both of us as well, which is why we got into
Yes.
this work.
Yeah, totally. And one of the things when I do like in-home decluttering, I feel like people appreciate I give them permission slips. I'm like, you
Yeah.
can get rid of that. You don't have to be burdened by that. And I love, the name of your podcast, No Guilt Mom, the name of your book that we're going to be talking about, The Best Mom is a Happy Mom. It's like you are in the business of giving out the permission slips too. And I love that.
Oh, absolutely. I feel like we need more permission as women to pursue what makes us happy instead of
Yes.
trying to please everybody else.
Yeah, and when I knew I was going to be interviewing you and reading the book, I wasn't really sure like what to expect exactly. And I love how it's framed around these like 15, I don't know if you want to call them like limiting beliefs or like lies that we tell ourselves that keep us stuck. And honestly, it is like holding up a mirror to your self-talk. And I just think, first of all, it was brilliant kind of what you chose and how you chose it. But then the kind of response is just so filled with compassion, but it's like neuroscience based compassion. I don't know what to call it. It was just really a pleasure to read. And I think that if anyone is feeling stuck or feeling like, oh, I'm just a bad mom because XYZ, like, you need to read this book, ladies. It's just really that great. So congratulations on the book, first of all.
Thank you. That is really everything that I intended, that I wanted in this book. So I'm so glad that that came across. And all those, yeah, I would call them limiting beliefs
Mhm.
too. Every phrase I started the chapter with, they're all things that I told myself or I felt or I've seen my clients tell themselves or feel. So I hope that this connects with so many women and helps people feel less alone.
Yeah. And with that in mind, just if anyone's not familiar with you or your podcast, could you just give a little bit of background about you, how you serve women, maybe like one thing you like to do for fun there in Arizona?
Yeah, so I started No Guilt Mom when my son was like not even before he turned one. He's my second, and I had recently been a teacher for 5 years, like an elementary school teacher. And I was home for like a year because I knew that I didn't want to go back into the classroom with an just having an infant and going in with a new class who was also had the reputation of being difficult, this class that was coming in. And so I stayed home and I got bored and I was like, how can I really use my skills that I learned in the classroom about dealing with kids? And how can I help moms? Because with a baby at home, you just feel so alone and so in your own thoughts. And that is when I started the business. And it all came from really seeing my mom while I was growing up. My mom is an excellent mom, so loving, so caring, but she really concentrated solely on me and my sister and didn't have a lot of activities for herself. And I saw that when I was growing up, and I would encourage her. I was like, Mom, like you said you wanted to, I'm sure she appreciated this. You said you wanted to get in shape. There's a gym at your work. Why don't you like go after work? And she's like, No, I have to be home for you and your dad. And she just wouldn't do anything for herself. And even now, I mean, I still try to push her to do things for herself. But seeing my mom give up everything for us, that's how I felt I needed to be as a mom too. And so I pushed back against motherhood for a bit. It was my husband who initially wanted kids. I went through a really hard adjustment when my daughter was born, postpartum depression, anxiety. I talk about that in the book. And my whole like mindset around parenting really changed in those first few months I had my daughter because I thought I had to be perfect in everything. I was hating breastfeeding. It was painful for me. Like she would latch on and I would be banging my foot against the coffee table to get through the pain. And not only was it painful, but I wasn't producing enough milk. And so, like, she had to latch on every 30 minutes. I wasn't getting sleep. It was awful. I went to therapy where I was complaining about this to my therapist, and she said something that completely turned my whole viewpoint around. She's like, JoAnn, your only responsibility is to feed your child. It's you don't have to breastfeed. You just need to feed her. And it was right there that I went to the grocery store. I bought a head of cabbage. I put my tightest sports bra on, stuffed it in my bra, and I fed my daughter a bottle for the first time. And I just felt this sense of relief and happiness, and like my control came back. And that is what I want for moms. I want them to have control over their lives. I want them to see that, yes, all of these things are being thrown at you, but you do still have some choices and you do still have some control and you're not alone in all of this. So that's my mission. That's who I serve everywhere from if you have a baby at home to school age to teens. I right now am the mom to a 17-year-old daughter. That's how old my daughter is, who I first had it, and a 12-year-old, almost 13-year-old son. So that's the stage of my life right now. But I just want women to feel less alone so that they could take their power back and their control.
Yeah, and isn't it interesting how that therapist kind of gave you that first permission slip, you know?
Right.
And when I saw the title of your book, knowing that story from the book, and I had something similar with the whole latch issue and like, crying, crying, crying. It was just horrible. I ended up
That's
just my own
horrible.
choice. I exclusively pumped, which was a full-time job then in and
Right.
of itself. But when you said the best mom is a happy mom, it almost made me think of like, the lie that we're told as far as like breast is best, breast is best, breast is best,
Right.
and
Hmm.
then it's like, no, wait, fed is best. And
Fat is
so
best.
yes, and then when you're like, the best mom is a perfect mom, the best mom does all the things for her kids, the best mom is a sacrificing mom, the best mom is a martyr. No, the best
Mhm.
mom is a happy mom. And it's kind of like that shift from what society is telling us or what we think has to be the way it is because we're seeing that all around us to no, actually, you don't have to do it that way. Like you can do it a completely different way and it's okay. And guess what? There's other people doing it too. and they're thriving and they're happy and they have like their own lives outside of all consuming motherhood. So it's interesting. I connected your title of the book with that breastfeeding story since that was kind of
Yeah.
the genesis of all of this for you.
It was. And it's so interesting when you are given choices in your life and you don't feel like you have to go down one perfect path. Because I can't remember if I mentioned this in the book, but like I stopped breastfeeding my daughter at, I think, oh gosh, how old was it? Probably about like six, or not even 6 months, like 2 months of age, maybe. My son, I breastfed for 2 years. Like it worked out just because I had the choice, I had the community, and in that situation, I didn't feel pressured by all the other things coming down on me. So just having that control and that choice can also make you a happier person.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you obviously, with your podcast name, No Guilt Mom, talking a lot about mom guilt. But one of the things that really struck me in the book, it was just this little thing. And it was like, well, actually, it should probably be called mom shame. And I was like, oh,
Mm.
that's really interesting. And I wanted you to kind of unpack that a little bit, sort of that difference between guilt and shame, and why really what we're struggling with is probably more of mom shame, perhaps, than mom guilt.
Yeah. So I first really learned the difference between shame and guilt from reading Brene Brown's work. And guilt is like you're upset over something that you did, but shame is you're upset over someone who you are, like your identity. You have control of guilt. Like guilt could be a really proactive thing. It prevents people from destroying relationships. It like gets people to apologize. It's a good equalizer in friendships as well. Like if one person gives something to the other person, it's guilt that gets that reciprocity to come back. So guilt could be really great. But shame is how you feel about yourself, your identity. And there's not much you could change about your identity. So you just have these really negative feelings towards yourself all the time. And I feel that when we talk about mom guilt, that's what we feel. We feel like we're bad in some way. We feel like something is wrong with us, that we are flawed. And that's a hard thing to do anything about.
Yeah, and I really try with my kids, especially my oldest. He has kind of perfectionistic tendencies, which unfortunately I think he got from me. But he'll get down on himself and he's like, "Oh, I'm just a bad kid or I'm an idiot or whatever." And I'm like, "No, like we're separating the action from who you are as a person, you know?" And it's I
Yeah.
feel like really important even at a young age. My kids are 8 and 9, but like as they're starting to recognize their self-talk, they're modeling what they see from us. So if we mess up and we're saying like, "Oh my gosh, I'm such an idiot. Oh my gosh, I can't believe I did that." Like, you know, it's good to, of course, not keep all our emotions inside. However, just being really, really cognizant of that self-talk, I've noticed is
Mhm.
super important as far as like, because our kids are always listening, right?
Right. Right. And like with the self-talk, like that's something I think I saw my parents do too, and that's how I learned it. And you know, people also learn it from sitcoms, from like TV shows, from their friends. And self-talk is one thing that I had to catch myself on as well. Like I would say like, "Oh, I can't believe I did that." And instead, just something that I have changed to that I found really, really helpful is along Dr. Kristen Neff's work on self-compassion, that three-step process where first you acknowledge your hurt of you doing something wrong, because we're all in pain if we feel that shame, if we feel that guilt, and just acknowledging that pain. And the second one, which I think has really helped in conversations with my kids, is that looking at if someone else was in the same circumstances you were. If, for instance, you had a really long day at school, you're not feeling that well, someone else like got an A on a test that you really study for, and you got a C, so you're comparing with that. And then you just like broke down and started crying or lost your cool. That, like, another person in those same circumstances would have probably reacted the same way, probably feel the same feelings. So just that knowing that you're not alone in how you feel, that alone can help not have that shame to yourself, not make you think like it is me who is inherently flawed as an individual. Rather, it's the circumstances and I am dealing with it the best I can. I try to model that for my kids as much as possible.
Yeah, that's something definitely I've grown in as a mom and just as a person. And so now I don't know if it's getting into my 40s. I'm not really sure, but I feel like I'm like, if I'm not going to have self-compassion for myself now, like when is it going to happen? Like, and it is a practice, which we'll talk about with some of these other aspects. You know, you have this
Mhm.
great analogy about the snowy mailbox, which we're going to get to in
Yeah,
just a second because I think it's a great one. But, you know, it does take time for us to form these new neural pathways. It's not something that happens immediately, and it's
right.
a process. And kind of similar to the self-compassion questions, you talk about something called circle thinking, which is related to, okay, if we're on that path, we're like, oh my gosh, I messed up. A great mom wouldn't do this. I really am a bad mom. I failed my kids. You know, you're starting to go down that mom shame spiral. Then
Mhm.
how do we kind of use this circle thinking concept in order to bring ourselves out in order to, yeah, stop that shame spiral?
Yeah, circle thinking is one of my favorite tools because it is something that when you do it regularly, you could stop yourself in the moment when you're having a thought. So, what it is it's a practice after something happened. So, for instance, if you yelled at your kids or if like you felt you had some reaction that you weren't proud of, you can go in your journal, and I encourage everybody to write it down because I feel like writing it down slows your thinking enough to actually like put your thoughts linearly on the page. And you start looking at, okay, here I was, and I, for instance, was at like the kitchen sink washing dishes, and I was totally happy. And then my emotions went from happy to sad and anger right away. And then I lost my temper with my child. What happened there? So with circle thinking, you go right back to that moment. You were happy and then you were angry. Okay, there was a trigger there. Something happened. And I found like one of my triggers was my son came up, asked me what's for dinner. I told him and he was like, I don't want to eat that." That was the moment. So from the trigger, you go to the emotion, like, or the, actually, I'm messing this up, Emily.
It's
You go
okay.
to the thought. You go to the thought from the trigger. What popped up in your mind as a result of that? So I looked at my thought and I was like, oh, mine was, I can't get anything right. I can't make my kids happy. And what emotion did that thought now create? Well, it created frustration with myself. It created anger with myself. And then what happened? I lost my cool. I lost my patience. And so first identifying that is really important. But the next part of circle thinking is going back to that thought and being like, what can I change that to that would be more helpful in that situation? And something that I thought, I was like, he's a kid. Kids complain about anything that is new to them or is unfamiliar. And then what's the emotion now when I think that thought? Well, my emotion is like, oh, okay, this is just how parenting is. And and I feel more in control. I feel like more like I have a handle on the situation. I understand what is going on. And so what's my behavior? I'm more patient with my child. I don't lash out at them. And so I had to do this exercise a few times after I lost my cool or after I found myself like just in these horrible moods where I didn't want to talk to anyone until I realized I'm like, oh my gosh, it is how I am interpreting situations. And I have control over how I interpret the situation. And so now I'm able to really see in the moment, oh, I just went from happy to sad. What happened? And I can go through that circle thinking in my mind and fix that thought or reframe the thought so that I can keep my emotions under control and therefore show up the way I want to.
I love that. And I was familiar with something similar from Byron Katie. It's like these four questions, like, you know, what is the thought? You know, what do I think when I think that thought, who would I be without the thought? And then you kind of like
Mm.
turn it around, you know? And so it's
Hmm.
similar like that circle, like kind of that turning around. And when you are in that situation again, which I feel like, so I have a whiteboard where I list all the things we're having for dinner. And so if the kids are like, what's for dinner? I'm like, check the board, you know?
Yeah,
I get
bored.
I
Yeah.
get so impatient. And then if they're like, I don't like that, that triggers me as well. And so let's say I've done my circle thinking, I've done my journaling, I've kind of, okay, I can understand, I get it. And then that trigger happens again. So, what, like the snowy mailbox, I want to bring into this part of the conversation because it is easy to go back to that, like, oh, like I'm going to react. How dare you, like, say blood to something that I'm taking time to cook? So, tell us about this snowy mailbox analogy and how that plays into forming these new neural pathways for ourselves so we don't keep getting triggered by the same things over and over again.
Yeah, so the snowy mailbox is a metaphor for how we form new neural pathways in the brain. Because there's that phrase, neurons that wire together, fire together. So, for example, that trigger of kids being like, oh, I don't want that, to the immediate emotion of like anger and frustration, those two neurons are wired together. And so it's an automatic, like, right, like that trigger. So to unwire them, you need to have practice in another thought. And think of it in terms of like a snowy mailbox. So if like you open your front door and like 2 feet of snow just landed on the ground. I always tell people, I'm like, I have no idea what's a realistic amount of snow, people. I live in Arizona, but I can picture the concept. And you need to get to the mailbox. It's going to be a hard path. Like you're going to be lifting your feet up like really high and stomping through it. It's going to be pretty slow. You get to the mailbox. And then when you follow that same path back, the snow is compacted a bit now. So it becomes easier to come back. And then if you're like, oh my gosh, if I forgot something in the mailbox or someone, my neighbor delivered something I need to go pick up, going back through that pathway now isn't so hard. And that's kind of how our neural pathways work as well. The more we practice something by going through the same motions, the easier it becomes for our brain to trigger that desired reaction. And with like your trigger, it has to be practiced a lot for that sense of anger to not come up. And what else is great about that situation is as soon as like you have control over your emotions and you're stopping reacting, you are then able to figure out other ways to kind of guide your kids through this, such as conversations I had with my kids. Is I'm like, I put a lot of work into dinner and a lot of thought into dinner, and it really like hurts me when you say, "Ugh, I don't want to eat that." They've gotten that now. So that through practice, they don't say those things anymore because they know, number one, it hurts me. And number two, a rule in our house is like, okay, then you make dinner. Like, you tell me what you want to eat, or you make it yourself, because makes like it requires a lot of work to feed a family.
Yeah. And my kids, like I said, they're behind yours a bit in age, but
Mhm.
I heard this one saying, which I love, which is we don't yuck on someone else's yum. And so that means
I love
like
that.
everyone has like different tastes and different preferences. And the thing we're having tonight, maybe your brother really likes, but you don't. But we don't yuck when someone else thinks it's yummy. So just a
Mm.
little side thing there. That's been really helpful when it comes to picky kids and eating for me.
I
Um,
love that. I love
yeah.
that phrase.
Well, I mentioned at the beginning, of course, that you have 15 chapters with 15 limiting beliefs. And I would, if I had podcasts that ran like 3 hours, we would go through all 15. But we're not going to go through all 15. But there was one that was something to the effect of my kids are doing this specifically to annoy me.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I have thought this so many times. I am like, I feel like my 8-year-old has some sort of diabolical mind, and he's kind of like, let me figure out what to do to mom today. Like, it's like how he wakes up and he's just like, I wonder what could annoy my mother today. And so I really loved this chapter, especially you mention your happy framework. You have several different tools and acronyms in the book, but I was wondering if you could help us kind of guide us through this reframing process of my kid is doing this to annoy me,
Oh, yeah.
using that happy framework.
Yeah, and I found that we're both fans of acronyms, Emily.
Yes,
I was
we
just
are.
listening to a recent podcast episode and I'm like, oh, she likes a good acronym. Oh, good. So with the mindset my kid is doing this to annoy me, there is obviously something that is a repetitive thing that your child does that probably gets on your nerves, and you want to fix that because anything that's repeated, that is something that really can clue you into, okay, this is a skill that needs to be taught, or this is some kind of feeling that we need to process and get through. So my happy framework is first H happy. The H of happy stands for have priorities. That means you are not doing this on every little thing because that would be overkill and really, really hard. You are looking at this framework from one a behavior that's repeated in your child. Maybe it's like even something as leaving clothes on the ground, or maybe it's yelling in the house when you're just like stressed out, or maybe it's like giving a fight at bedtime. One thing you're doing this with that happens on a repeated basis. The A of happy is to appreciate your kid's point of view. This is the game changer. This is the one that once parents start doing this, the whole mindset around like their relationship with their child, like it just changes because we make so many assumptions about why our kids behave the way they do, but we don't know how to get out of our kids like why they are behaving the way they are. So there's questions you can ask your kid. And this comes from Dr. Ross Green's framework in The Explosive Child about asking kids, like, what were you thinking when you were, for instance, complaining about going to bed? And when you ask a question like that, kids say stuff like, I was thinking I still really wanted to play on my game. Or I was thinking I was almost ready to beat that level when you said I had to go to bed. When you find that out as a parent, you're like, oh, I could identify with that one. I felt the same things as a child versus, oh, they're just doing this to make my life miserable. Like your thinking completely shifts. And then your next step in happy is to process your own emotions and concerns. And with kids, usually it's one sentence that you tell them, and it either has to do with how their behavior affects them or how their behavior affects other people. So with the bedtime thing, I mean, you could go either way with that. You could be like, I am concerned that you're not going to get enough sleep for school, and it's really important to get sleep. That's how that affects them. The next P is problem solve. And that's when you bring your kids into the conversation. It's not you having to think about, okay, how are we going to solve this problem? Oh, I could do rewards. Oh, I could do this. Oh, I could do that, because that's not going to work in the long term. For people to actually make a change, and yes, kids operate the same way as all humans, they need to be involved in the process. They need to feel the autonomy that they have a choice in the matter. They need to feel the relatedness that they have like a good relationship with you, and it's trusting and wonderful. And they need to feel capable of actually carrying out that agreement. And so with problem solving, you're just asking kids, okay, like what ideas do you have to solve this problem where both of us can get our needs met? And that's really important because your needs as a parent are important. That's one of the pushbacks that I see against gentle parenting right now, is that gentle parenting is really getting confused with permissive parenting, where the kids run the show. And that's not what this is at all. This is just taking the kids' needs into consideration and taking yours into consideration so that you're going to get your needs met if your kid's going to bed and get enough sleep. But your kids are also going to have some say in the situation about their concerns, like getting to finish a level, for instance. So you ask them how you can solve the problem with both of your needs being met. And then the why is yield the work, which means you let it go with your kid's solution that you both agreed to. You're not nagging, you're not reminding, you're just seeing how it goes from there. Maybe you need to check in a little later on, like a few days. If you see it's not working, then you just go back to the problem solving phase. Or your kids may take responsibility for it because they had input into the solution. So that's the happy framework right there.
Yay. And I read The Explosive Child like years ago, but I had kind of forgotten some of the parts. But I think two of the things that I love are that it is focused on curiosity and also collaboration. So curiosity is kind of like, huh, I noticed blah, 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 blah. Can you tell me more? Like, what's up with that? Like, and not in like, what's up with you type of way, but like, oh, really interesting. What's up with that? And then also the collaborative for the problem solving. I've done that with my kids, and I'm like, okay, I would love your ideas about what we can do differently because I'm noticing that when you guys come down to go out to the bus, you are fighting on the stairs, which is not safe. Like, you're
Mhm.
always tripping each other. Like, maybe one person can go 5 minutes before the other. What do you think of that? Oh, well, I don't really like that. Okay. Well, unless someone has a different idea right now, we're going to go with my idea. But if you have an idea in the future, let me know and we can consider your idea. So I think the curiosity and the collaboration is definitely something I'm working on, but rather than the immediate like judgment or like, consequence or any of those things, it just yeah, it's a learning process, but it makes it much smoother because the kids are actually involved, like you said, in the process.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have to tell you, like, as the mom of now, my daughter's a senior in high school. She's going off to college this year. We did not have any rebellious behavior whatsoever from my daughter. In fact, my daughter tells us that we're the parents who she can actually talk to versus what she hears her friends' parents are. And so when you use this method where you're collaborative with your kids, it's this mutual respect where you don't worry about the teen years. You don't have like I don't have these big huge explosive fights with my daughter. Now, do we have our disagreements? Of course. Is she grumpy sometimes and doesn't know how to handle her emotions yet because her like cerebral cortex isn't fully formed until 25? Of course. But there's like none of these like stretched out rebellious things where she will like go into bad behavior just to defy us or go against us. So the collaborative parenting approach has really long-term benefits.
Yes, that's what I keep telling myself every time I practice.
It really, really does. Really does.
Well, I want to move into boundaries because this is something that we all like hear about and we kind of know about, but then it is so critical when it comes to being a happy mom and being able to pursue our own things outside of having children and kind of that all-consuming motherhood. And there's different definitions of boundaries, but you share one in the book as far as it's allowing us to take full responsibility for our actions and our desires
Mhm.
rather than being impacted by other people or that our boundaries are contingent on other people's needs and desires. So let's break
Mhm.
down what boundaries are, and then I'd love you to share some aspects of setting boundaries from, yeah, all the great stuff you share in your book.
Yeah, so boundaries are one of my favorite things to talk about because it's the one thing that I struggled really hard with. Uh, because boundaries are something that you will do as a result of the action. It is not something that you're requiring someone else to do. Boundaries are in your control at all times. So, with kids, for instance, a lot of like pushback I see about this approach is that, yeah, well, I tried to collaborate with my kids and they just broke down crying and gave me so much attitude. And my response is like, cool, that is exactly what I expect to happen. like you are not going to say the thing to make your kids never have an emotional response. Like that is not the goal. You want them to actually have an emotional response because only through practice with them actually hearing a boundary from another person and having to go through their emotions and figure out like, ooh, I'm not really proud of how I acted in that situation. The practice is the only thing that cements that long term. So we want our kids to have that emotional reaction when they're younger with us so that we can help them through it. So when kids do that, what is your next response? Because we cannot control behavior. We can only control our own behavior. So in that kind of situation, what I recommend doing, a boundary that I have, is first I realize kids don't have a fully formed cerebral cortex and their control over their emotions is not the same as, say, an adult would be. And so I have empathy for them with that. And I'm like, I know it is so hard putting that device away when you really want to play with it. I get that. It is hard. You are probably really angry right now. And when you're there and you can empathize with that emotion, kids feel seen, and that emotion lowers in intensity. Because what you're also able to do in that moment is you're able to name that emotion that kids are feeling. And whenever you name something, it takes the intensity away from it. So that's the first way to react in that kind of scenario. But your boundary stays firm. You're not saying that they could just cry there on the couch and they don't have to put their iPad away. What you're doing is you're saying, okay, I see you're angry. It is time to go to bed. Let me help you. Let me take this iPad. Let me put it over there. Let's walk to bed together. And they may cry and they may have a fit in which you just go back and name the emotion. Oh, this is really frustrating for you. You are really, really angry. Like, I can see that. This is hard for you. And you just do it again and be like, okay, the iPad is over there. And that's the boundary. You're putting that iPad away regardless of your kid's behavior. How they act is no influence on your boundary. And I think that hearing that and hearing that that's okay and that kids are allowed to have that emotional response and it's totally developmentally appropriate, I hope that if you're listening right now, it kind of lowers your anxiety a little when your kids do have that response.
Yeah, and it is difficult. I mean, a lot of times, and you give the bedtime example, and that's when we are the lowest at our energy levels and like
Exactly.
decision fatigue and all of the things. And so just being able to know, like, it's okay. Like you said, the emotional reaction is normal, it's expected. I'm going to empathize, I'm going to be available for them to help
Hmm.
them. And then, but it's still what it is.
Yeah.
And I sometimes, when it comes to physical things, like I always say that we have the boundary for physical things based upon the value to us. So when my kids have a bunch of trinkets, I'm not going to have like a huge, like multiple tubs in their room of all of these junky trinkets. We have like one little box because of the energy that it takes to kind of manage our stuff. And when it comes to
Absolutely.
any kind of boundaries in our lives, it's like, okay, we want to have the boundary based upon our values and bringing it back to that. Like, it's really important that you get enough sleep. It's really important to your health. It's really
Mhm.
important so that we can be friendly to our family members. And because of that, it is time and I understand it's tough, but you can also kind of like bring it back to that value conversation too.
Yeah, and I love also, Emily, that you bring up like the bedtime happens when we are emotionally depleted and really, really tired because sometimes like you just don't have the energy for those conversations with your kids when you are saying like, "Oh, I see how it's tough." And you need to take a break from it. There has been several times in my parenting where my kids have had an emotional reaction and I've just put like my hand on their shoulder and be like, I see how hard this is for you. I will be right back in 5 minutes to check on you because I needed to remove myself from the situation because I was emotionally overwhelmed and I was tired and I just needed to have that space. So that's completely okay as well. Like you do not have to stay there and continue hearing these emotions. Give yourself the space to calm down so that you can come back in. I've also tapped out with my husband. I'm like, tap out, you're in.
Oh my gosh, I
I'm
do
gonna
that.
lose
I do it
it.
so much. I'm like, okay, your turn. Yeah.
Yep.
And my closet, I joke with my kids. I'm like, mommy has to go to her cry closet and then I'll be back.
I love that.
It's
You're but
like,
but you're
sense.
validating crying
Yeah,
and that's okay.
exactly.
That's a great thing.
Yeah, it's like my sensory deprivation chamber. I can just lay down and calm myself down and then come back and they can see like I regulated my emotions. Now I can, have this conversation. So,
Yeah.
all right, before we wrap up, I have one more question. So, it is very easy. I also come from a family, my mom, being very kind of wrapped up in everything that we were doing, kind of more of that like martyr mindset. And now, at least, now that I'm in my 40s, even when I was in my 30s, I saw her start to kind of branch out to do some of these things that were just for her. But you talk about creating healthy separation. And so for some people, especially if they have learned about like attachment parenting, maybe like when their kids were like super young, or like some of these things where it's like you and your baby are joined as one forever, and it might be like, wait, what do you mean separation? Like, I thought I'm supposed to be involved in every aspect of their lives, and that's the healthiest thing. So, can you tell us about why that healthy separation is so incredibly important for us as moms?
Oh my gosh, yes. And it's important for kids as well, because like the definition of healthy attachment is that also when you are separated from your child, they're okay and they know you're coming back. Like they're confident in the world. And that's really what we want for our kids, because our jobs are to work ourselves out of a job as a parent. We want kids who move out like my daughter's going to do in 134 days, by the way. I know that. I know that number because that's when our flight's booked and Delta tells me. But like we want that to happen. That means we succeeded. So to do that, like if we wait until they're going off to college to make that separation, that's going to be intensely hard on both us and our child. So the earlier we can kind of start to make that identity for ourselves that is separate from our kids, the better. Now, this helps me close a loop because we opened a loop at the beginning where you asked me what I did for fun. And I've had that in my head the entire time. I'm like, I did not answer Emily's question. So I noticed even though I talk about this stuff all the time, I've been doing this for over 12 years now. I don't do it perfectly. No Guilt Mom is definitely an ideal. And I noticed that when I was touring colleges last year with my daughter, I was immensely sad. Not just because I was going to lose her, because I don't believe I'm losing her in this college process. In fact, it might help us become closer with the amount of like kind of like head to head mother daughter stuff. But I felt sad because she was going to go and have this grand adventure. And I was like, what is going on in my life? Like, where's my grand adventure? Is this all over for me? And it caused me to go into a bit of a depression and some life reevaluation until I decided I saw my sister-in-law do improv comedy for a few years. And I was in theater before. I love to act. I love to be on stage. I was always scared to death of improv because I'm like, how do they make that up right there? I couldn't do that. I joined improv comedy classes. I started with Improv 101 last October. And on Monday of this week, I just had my showcase for Improv 102. And now I'm going into 103. I love it. It's what I do for fun. I enjoy being silly. I enjoy getting up on stage. And it is something that is completely separate from my entire family. I loved the showcase on Monday because my kids and my husband got to come see me and this different side of me and what I am up to when I leave them all on Monday nights to go to my class. So having that separation is so important, not just because it helps, your kids become more independent, but it also like helps your kids see possibilities for them.
Yeah.
And it helps you relate better to your kids too. If you're going to go and do something scary, then when your kids are about to do something scary, you're not just giving them lip service. They've actually seen you go do it. They know it's normal to have fears and anxiety before you do something new. So you're also serving as that role model for your kids when you separate from them.
Yes. Oh, I love that so much. And congrats to you for doing
Oh,
that.
thanks.
Yeah, I love it. Well, I want you to let everyone know where they can connect with you, where they can find the book. Let us know all the things.
Yes, so I am at noguiltmom.com and you can get the book on Amazon. It is called The Best Mom is a Happy Mom. And Amazon is where it's at
Yeah.
because I self-published.
Good.
So that's where you can get it. And I have a podcast, the No Guilt Mom podcast. So if you enjoy listening to podcasts as you are right now, go and find me over there.
Awesome. Well, I will be sure to link all of that in the show notes. So thank you so much, JoAnn. It was just really a pleasure chatting with you, and congrats again on the book.
Thank you so much, Emily. I'll talk to you with you soon.
Hey, Mama, thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed today's show, could you please share this episode with another mom who is feeling overwhelmed? Also, it would mean the world to me if you could leave a 5-star written review wherever you listen to your podcasts. Finally, if you would like more support, come on over to our free Facebook group, tinyurl.com/moms overcoming overwhelm. Can't wait to connect with you soon.